Woo! Okay, so after summoning some old Google Docs and my folders that I worked on, can finally run through the tutorial quickly. So in this video, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run through Mius-Front and tank warfare, and this is assuming that you've already got the sounds or the textures that you want to put in and that it is already in the correct format. So you'll see on page 79 of the game manual, it gives a quick run through of the modifications that you can do with the in-game tool. So you'll see here there's one for missions, so that's just you can set up a mission in the battle editor and then save it as a mission and share it with other people. And then with the sounds, you'll see that the sounds that you can replace here, it's all in a very specific format. The game does not detect it if it's not in that format, so it needs to be in that format if you want to upload it. And then finally we'll be having a quick look at textures. You'll see with the textures you have the option of putting it in either format of DXT1 or DXT2. That's just dependent on what kind of texture it is, where DXT1 has a higher compression but or its alpha channel is only a 1 or a 0, where DXT5 takes up a little bit more space, but there's something where you don't necessarily have something that's just completely opaque or completely transparent. And then I'll quickly run through the lists that it generates, how to set up your folder, and then how to get it running, how to install it on the in the game. And that's pretty much it. As I said, this is just gonna be a very broad overview. In the next video, when I go into the usage of Operation Stars tools, I will also go a little bit more into detail in terms of formatting your file. Okay, so let's quickly run through it. As I mentioned, tank warfare and Mius-Front is pretty much the same game in terms of functionality. So I'm just going to be using tank warfare, but this is exactly the same in either tank warfare or in Mius-Front. So this is also something that you'll see from the older game in the next video when we go through that. But it just kind of became a best practice habit to, when you're working on mods, just create a folder under your game folder, go to users, and then under Modwork, create a folder called Modwork, and then effectively just use this as a central place for editing and modifying your mods and just keeping everything organized in one place. So let's fire up tank warfare. Alright, so here in the main menu, there's only two things that we really need to worry about at this point in time. So on the one hand, you have your player profile, and that is where you go to the modding section. If you click on that little wrench, and then you'll see here you can have missions, sounds, and textures. And then on the other side of the main menu, you'll see it says the version. So this is where you can go into the little launcher that allows you to enable or disable and install mods. Okay, so the first thing I want to handle is, when it comes to mods, missions is the first thing we'll have a look at. So you'll see that there is an option for missions under modifications. What that effectively allows you to do is, when you go into battle editor, you can set up your mission here. I'm not gonna run through how to set up a mission. It's not a tutorial on that, just how it forms part of modifications. So once you've set up your mission here, placed your units, you've given some mission objectives, whatever the case might be, created groups, given them orders as to how they should run through, then you can also set up a lot of different variables for this mission. But once you've set it up, here where it says start battle, it also says right click to save battle as a mission. What you can do here is you can save it, and it'll bring you to this screen where you can just change the file name to whatever you want. I'm just going to call it demo mission. Alright, you can give it an image, you can give it a description, and then once you're done with that, you can save the mission. So now it'll show under quick battles on my screen, because if you go out into the game folder, you will see that it's created this demo mission pack. So what you want to do now is, if you want to copy this mission for someone else to play, you'll see that it's under the game folder, data, common, shared missions. Let's just go through that. Data, common, shared missions. You'll create it there. So now let's say I want to create it, I want to repackage it as a mod for someone else. I copy that into my Modwork folder, and then I'll have the mission demo. I'll paste it there. Right, so now I go back in. Now I'm going to delete it here, so it's gone here. It's no longer under missions. So now if I want to install it as a mod, I come back down here to modifications. I say missions. I say demo mission. Then select the folder. It's under users, Modwork, mission demo. Okay, and then I can just click on build, and it will create the demo mission.gt3 extension, which is the packaged or the archived version of this. Then I can just go to my game updater, click on install, go into the folder where that GT3 file is now created, which we created under Modwork, mission demo missions there. And now you'll see that it shows as an add-on and it's enabled. Now if I go back into the game, go back to missions, you'll see that it has appeared here again. So like I said, that way you can set up missions and create all kinds of, well, any mission that you would like, and you can just package it as a mod. This is also valid for multiple missions. So if we look at the mission demo folder now I've got 3 missions that I packed as you see, it packs the mispack. And then what I'll do is under mods, I'm just gonna go here. I've already run through it now, but basically you select the folder once again, just call it mission demo, tell it to build it. It's going to package all 3 of those missions, and I can come here to my game updater, install. Which one did I call it now? Mission pack. Oops, there we go. And then go to play, and then once you see, go back to missions. So you can basically build out a little mini campaign, if you will, with multiple missions. And then the whole idea behind using the modifications tool is to package all of those missions into just one package, basically. Okay, so next up we are gonna have a look at the textures for the games. Under the modifications, so once again you go into your player name, click on the little wrench, and you'll find textures over here. So in this case we're gonna call the texture mod Blitz Hexagon. We'll select the folder. So this is the folder that I want to put the different textures in, and then the ones that I want to modify, this is where I'll then repackage them into a mod. So we'll come down here to Blitz demo in this case, we'll say okay, and then we click here on source files. This will unpack the game source files, which will in this case give you a list of the textures and also the textures themselves. So we click on source files, it'll say unpacking, and then once it's unpacked we can go over to the game folder, and you'll see that it will create this textures.list textures.list.txt and then the source file. So under textures.list, this will give you all of the textures that you can replace via the modifications. You'll see it's split into 2 things: humans, which is your soldiers, and then tech N, which is all of your vehicles. I'm not 100% sure I can't remember what that stood for, but I'm just going to call it technicals. But yeah, it's basically all of the vehicles in the game, and you'll see that it also creates 2 types of textures for each. So under textures, it will also unpack the actual textures. So under the source file, you'll find the 2 folders. So we'll be looking at the vehicles one specifically. So if you come here, you'll see that it creates the the bump maps and then the diffuse maps. So I'm not going to go into too much depth in this as I'm not knowledgeable enough, but basically the diffuse, or in this case where it says reg, that is your color scheme for a specific texture, and this is what obviously goes over the models. And then if you come over here, you'll get the bump maps, which this is what gives your textures depth. So I'm not going to be changing anything of the depth maps or the bump maps, and nor am I going to go into detail of what those are and how to modify them. As I said, I'm not qualified enough to go into depth of that. However, so I've already got the one that I want. So here you can just choose whatever texture you want to choose and how you want to modify it. And like I said, I'm not going to go into details of how to do that, but basically once you're done, so in this case I have taken the Opal Blitz and I've added this hexagon type camouflage to it that I want to incorporate into the game. So we'll go here. You can, if you want to keep on modifying, you can keep it open. If you want to keep your folder clean, you can always delete it, because that is from that build source file and we don't need that anymore, as I've already got the source file that I wanted to modify. So now we're just going to delete those two. The repackager is not going to pick up this folder, so it will pick up this file, however. So just a quick note on that, I'm going to go into GIMP just to show you. So when you do save it, you have to also save it as an .dds file, and once you're done modifying it, you've got to save it as the exact same name that it was inside the game. You got to export it. In this case, yes, I'm going to replace the one that I have, and then you've got to choose either DXT1 or DXT3. That depends on what kind of how much alpha information is in it. DXT1 is a more compact file, but all of its alpha channels is only a 1 or a 0. So that's for something that's either 100% opaque with 0% transparency, and vice versa, where DXT3 has the alpha range. Something might not be 100% opaque, it could be anywhere in between. So it's a little bit bigger, but it contains more information. What you also need to do is you need to ensure that you generate MIP maps. So MIP maps are just, it'll create smaller versions of this image, which when you are zooming in and out, depending on the LOD. So what the MIP maps does is it determines how your model will look on when it loads the certain LOD, which is the level of detail. So if it's far away, it's going to use the smallest MIP map. That's just how most rendering stuff works. Once again, I'm not going to go into detail of that, but yeah, once you generate the MIP maps, it's going to take this thing and create ever smaller versions of it, which it uses in game as when you are zoomed out versus when you are very close to a vehicle. So obviously the closer you are to a vehicle, the higher definition your skin will be. So we're going to export it. All right, and now, so as I mentioned, now I've already got it here. So it's called Opal Blitz 36 des.dds. So that is the one that I will be packaging. We go back into the game. As I said, I've already selected the folder. Now once I'm done modifying the file that I want, I come here to build. So now it's going to build my texture into a mod that I can install. So we're going to build it. Then this install button is supposed to take it to the updater thing, but I've not found it to work. So just go here, go back into your installer, say install, and you'll see that when you go into that folder now where we were working under Blitz demo, it's created the .gt3ext archive. So that now contains this specific modified texture that I have. So obviously you can modify as many textures as you want, as long as they retain the same name as they were in the original game files. So like I said, in this case it's just going to be the one. So I'm going to open that, right? And when we look in Encyclopedia now, when we go to my Opal, and there we go, there is the new texture loaded onto the model. And just so you understand also how the modifications work, so now I've got this texture on. However, let's say I want to remove this texture now. So we come back out here and I can just disable this, boop, go back into play, and then when we go to the cyclopedia, and there you'll see it has restored the original texture. Alright, so what I wanted to just quickly show you here, under the creating modifications in the game manual, it does say here that textures of soldiers and vehicles, here it just tells you that it needs to be in either DXD1 or DXD5 as a DDS extension, and as I mentioned, it does need to have the actual name that it had in game. So do not change the name, just save it as is, but when you do load it as a modification, all it does is then it overwrites the game file. But as you saw, once I remove it again, then it's back to the normal textures. Okay, and next up is the sounds. So as it says here, you can change the sounds of the engines, explosions, shots, collisions, fire burning, and others. Modified sounds should be placed in the modification folder under a wave format at 44 kilohertz, 16-bit, and mono with a dot wave extension. So once again, very important that it is actually in this format, otherwise the game will not detect it. So let's quickly go into my modification folder, which is where now? Yoink. Okay, so under my modification folder, under users, Modwork, I've got an audio demo here that we're going to be using today. So this is just a sample audio file. It's just so that we can specifically see which audio file is replaced. So you'll see here
shot 1, shot 1, shot 2, shot 3, shot 4.
Okay, so as I mentioned, reason for that specific one is just so that we can very easily see when it is in fact installed in the game. So when we go back into our modification folder, or game, we go here to the modification thing, and then this time around we're going to be doing sounds. So we'll call this shot demo. So the name that you put here also, that is basically what it will package the .gt3 extension as. So the folder that we're going to select, once again under Modwork, audio demo, okay. And so with this one under source files, it unpacks just the list itself. It does not give you the actual sounds. So I'm not sure what the reason behind it is, why the authors of the devs of the game wanted it like that, but nonetheless, it at least gives you the names of the sounds that you can replace. So we're going to click on source files, it gives us the folder. So now when we go back into, you will see that it gives you the sound lists.txt. So this will give you a summary. First of all, what these covers. So shots, that's your cannon or gunshots. Explosions, so collisions is normally when you run into a tree, those kind of things. I think that. So then the engine sounds, and then we've got pillars, which is short for caterpillar, but that's effectively what the tracks are in the game. Fire burnings, L fires are just normal fires, and then hit is your shell and bullet hits. Sorry, yes, so correction, then collisions is just purely then when things collide, so like when you drive over a bush, for example. Alright, so and then it'll give you a rundown of all the sounds that is available in the game that you can replace. Here's collisions, here is the engines, here's explosions, and then fire, we've got hit dirt, so that's when like a bullet hits the dirt, or when it hits a person, or when it hits a vehicle, or when it hits the water. You see caterpillars, these are for your vehicles, so these are the sound the tracks make when they're driving. And then the cannon shots and gunshots as well. So you'll see AK-47, for example, that's a shot plays when a AK-47 in an infantry's hand is firing. So yeah, that gives you a rundown. So there's quite a lot that you can replace here or look at. It's about 412 files apparently. So it does give you a lot of stuff to look at. Unfortunately, things like the ambient sound and the speech sound, that is a bit more difficult to get in. So that I'll be covering in the next video. This is just for the ones that you can modify via the built-in modification tool. So there's another thing that I wanted to add here. So you'll see that sometimes some sounds have multiple versions of it. So you can use this naming schema throughout with anything really. So you have your for example, this is the same shot that gets, or when this specific thing happens, it chooses one of these sounds to play. So in Mius-Front on the beta version, if you go into Steam and select that beta version, I know the last time I checked in October 2024, the devs made it so that it actually cycles through sounds within game, as we as a community requested for that. That gives us that gives you a lot more variation. So what Tank Warfare still does, and I think Mius-Front on the normal, not in the Steam beta version, is that it basically selects a sound before the match starts and just plays that sound throughout the match. So there are multiple sounds, however it will only choose one and play it throughout the match. So from my understanding, what the devs said is it was basically it was just an optimization thing, but I do think the reason why they accommodated us with that little bit of a change is just because hardware has become a lot more powerful than it was when Mius-Front was launched. So just something to note, that if you want to make multiple sounds for one cannon shot or one engine, this is how you can add multiple versions of it with this numbering scheme. So we'll look here at my audio demo folder. I've done the same thing. So this is the normal shot, but then so this is what the file is called in this list. However, I've made technically 4 variations, but 5 variations for this demo. And so all you have to do is you have to keep you can just copy the sound as long as it's in the correct format. Just to show you here, go into properties, details. So you'll see here that it's in mono. It's at 44.1 44,100 kilohertz, and then 44,100 hertz, and then 16-bit audio sample size. So that is something that you can set up via what I usually use. I use Audacity to save the files in the necessary format, and like as I mentioned, if it's not in the correct format, the game won't detect it. So how do we get this up and running? Quite easy. We just go here. All right, so I've already selected the folder. Now all I do is, as I said, you just keep the main files in the mod folder. You can just click on build here. So we called it shot demo. When we come here to install, we're going to go into that folder, which is audio demo. You'll see that it's got the .gt3 extension file now. We can go in there. It automatically enables it here. This one was specifically for the Sherman. So now we can go into the encyclopedia, go back to my tank, and voila. You'll hear that it still shows, still plays normal shot sounds as well, as the game only adds these shots to the list effectively. So here you'll see this is the normal sound for the Browning, and for the 30 cal, and for the engine. And then now for the shots, if this worked correctly, you'll hear the different shots. Just waiting for this engine.
Shot 1, shot 1, shot 4, shot 1, shot 1, shot 4, shot 4, shot 3, shot 1, shot 4, shot 1, shot 4, shot 4, shot 3, shot 1.
So as you can hear, the randomization is not the best, but it does cycle through the sounds. As I mentioned, Currently, how Tank Warfare and the normal version of Mius-Front is selected, I know I'm repeating myself, it's just a clarification. It chooses which sound it wants to play before the match and then uses that one sound for the entire match. Where if you go into Steam and go select the beta version, so actually let's run through that real quick. So if you come here to Graviteam, go into, or right click on it, manage properties, sorry, go to betas, and then you'll see here there's a public beta, test new features. If you go into that one, then it'll actually cycle through the sounds in a match. I just quickly want to run through the folder as well. Basically now you can effectively delete this folder should you wish, as this shot demo has now been installed on your main game, so it just needs this GT3 extension file to install it the first time around. However, you can now delete all of this, and what I'm going to be covering in the next video, which we'll be looking at Operation Stars tools. Effectively what it does, it does the same thing. This in-game tool just made it a lot easier to make mods, as you just need to copy the files that you want to insert into the main folder, and it automatically creates this little archive folder for you, where, as you can see here, if you look in here with everything that's in the core pack data, it changes the sound, the shots. It basically packages this into the game, into the folders or the files that the game can read. So as I mentioned, this one specifically, all you need is this file. This is what you can then share or install, as it already contains everything that's in that folder now as well. Yeah, that basically covers the basic in-game tools of how to mod. I hope that is clear enough. If not, just leave me a comment, I guess, and I'll see if I can get back to you. As I said, unfortunately, I'm quite occupied IRL at the moment, so I'm not going to be available a lot or very rapidly when questions are asked. So as I mentioned, just leave a comment there. I will get back to it eventually. And yes, as I mentioned, I do hope that you found some value out of this. I think what I'm going to do is I'll just put in a link to my Matilda sound mod for steel armor, as this video is already running much longer than I was hoping, and the main core idea of this video was just specifically how to get mods up and running for these games. As I said, I don't dive too much into the actual formatting and how to set that up. As I said, please take a look at the Matilda video. It covers steel armor. However, I also do mention that a lot of it is relevant to the tactical war games, which in this case is Mius-Front and Tank Warfare.